Warning. This podcast contains material that may or may not be considered appropriate for the average Trumptopian household. Listen at your own risk to unauthorized and explicit reading,
which is a special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast featuring Good Morning Trumptopia. Hello and welcome back, friends. I'm your eccentric, chaotic, neutral, law-abiding host, entheogenic mystic, and self-proclaimed futurist, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Welcome back. Sorry if I've been a little eccentric and weird and monotonous with this particular little triptych mini sub-series. But I think it's important, because this way, like I said before, I no matter what I did or do not or fail to remember in the future, no matter what I forget, I'll always have it as part of the show that I read this as part of the show, so I can just trust that I screwed myself over. It's, as the song says, it's my own damn fault. Ain't that always the truth? Here we go. Continuing with the theme today for this, tying it off, finally wrapping it up, final episode. Not going to yell. Don't need to. Realize I've been yelling this whole time. Don't need to yell. It's a radio show, not a live theater performance. Terms of service, Sprecher.com. Users of the services offered by Sprecher acknowledge and accept these terms and conditions. Owner of Sprecher and related services, Voxnest Incorporated. Introduction, this document. This document is a legal agreement between you, the user, that's me, and the entity providing Sprecher. It governs your use of the online properties and, in any case, for the use of the services provided. Legal agreement, quote-unquote, means that the terms of this agreement are binding on the relationship between you and us once you have accepted them. For simplicity, user, you and your, and similar terms, either in the singular or in the plural form, refer to you, the user. We, or us, or our, and similar terms refer to the corporation that owns and manages Sprecher, as outlined in the present document. Sprecher refers to the current website and or application. Agreement, quote-unquote, refers to this document as amended from time to time. The agreement is concluded in the English language. Other defined terms are set forth in the sections named definitions at the bottom of the agreement. Acceptance of this agreement. In order to use Sprecher, you must read this agreement carefully and agree to accept the same by clicking the button for its acceptance. If you don't accept this agreement, you cannot use this service. What's fascinating, friends, is that every EULA has that clause, and yet no one reads the EULA. It's really weird. So we all live out of compliance of that which we are legally bound to be in compliance of, and no one seems to care. Or there's some sort of gotcha trap happening. I don't know. Stay tuned as we proceed to make a special ongoing segment of reading all the EULAs. That might be a thing. That might be the thing that makes us famous, right? That's going to make this show famous. This show did a special documentary series, all the EULAs. And we just read every EULA that is applicable to, the average Joe Schmo in modern life. Up to and including what's it called? The Constitution of the United States of America. I was going to call it the Congress of the United States of America. I'm like, that's not a EULA. That's a building with old people in it. Okay, I digress. Before I trash my voice completely for the week, I'm going to finish reading this document. Shouldn't have been yelling so much, should I have had? Registration and prohibited use of Sprecher. Registration. In order to use the service or any part of it, users must register in a truthful and complete manner, providing all the required data in the relevant registration form. I did 3 years ago. The user must also accept the privacy policy, these terms and conditions in full. Users are responsible for keeping their login credentials confidential. I have, and routinely change them. It is understood that the owner shall not be held responsible under any circumstances in case of loss, disclosure, theft, or unauthorized use by third parties for whatever reason of the user's access credential. Wow. So under no circumstance can the people who operate Sprecher be held accountable should Sprecher be hacked and our content be ruined. That's sad. They should put up some kind of a fight on our behalf. So should every content hosting platform. We've already read the age eligibility thing. Registered users on Sprecher, you are presented and you warrant that you are an adult according to the legislation in your country. We do not accept registrations of users under the age of 13. Each user between the ages of 13 and 18, or whichever is the age of majority in the country of residence, may only register provided the parent or legal guardian consent to the registration, acknowledges that it agrees to be bound by the agreement, and ensures that the use of Sprecher by the minor is under their supervision. So kids, don't listen to Sprecher. Adults, listen to Sprecher. Listen to my show on Sprecher or any of your favorite podcast things. But if you happen to be listening on some other podcasty thing and you're under 18 and you're under 13, be warned, you have been warned. Sprecher doesn't think that's cool, and I'm not going to get busted for your breaking the social standard norms of how podcasts work. So, bless it, bless your heart. For all intents and purposes, this is me saying I do not recruit nor welcome nor encourage minors under the age of 13, or for that matter, too much under the age of 18, listening to my show in violation of my platform's EULA, because I'm not looking for that, right? My audience are adult who are just adults, period. So for whatever reason, because there's bound to be, right? There's bound to be. You can't get mad at me. 11-teen-year-olds are constantly cracking into the adult world vis-a-vis acquiring content. And if you happen to be one of those and you're listening to this, you're getting a good laugh. Just keep in mind that you're breaking the law at me, and you might be ruining my show. Don't ruin my show. Wait until you're old enough, and then register properly and download it and give me those numbers. That was horrible. That was jaded of me. Okay. Deleting user accounts and account termination. Registered users can cancel their accounts and stop using the service at any time through the interface of Sprecher or by directly contacting the owner. The owner, in case of breach of terms by the user, reserves the right to suspend or terminate the user's account at any time without notice. Oh, so they can fucking jack me anyways, right? Even if I'm always perfectly in compliance and always had been and didn't travel backwards in time to scrub my content already, so that it's now lovely, comedically overdubbed with funny noises and me going, hey, I'm not supposed to say this stuff on the radio. I'm sorry, I didn't know at the time when I said it live. And I don't have a live bleepy machine that automatically bleeps all the things that are in violation. That'd be cool. So if I said something that would needed to be bleeped, I could just, trust that it did it for me automatically. Get on that. Whoever is designing Sprecher code, that'd be cool to just be like, oh, okay, just these words, and have a master list of hopefully not too many curse words, because curse words should be allowed, but the worst ones, the really horrible ones. That would become an unmanageable database, because if you start compiling every language, plus all the things that countries that are slightly totalitarian in their nature want to oppress, it just turns into a massive database of things that got to be bleeped. Anyways, I digress. The owner reserves the right to suspend or terminate the user's account at any time without notice if it believes that, bulletin list, user has violated this agreement, and or users' access to use of service may result in injury to the owner, other users, or third parties, and or the use of Sprecher by the user may result in violation of law or regulations, and or in case of any investigations by legal action, government involvement, and or the account is deemed to be at the owner's sole discretion for whatever reason, inappropriate or offensive or in violation of this agreement. Ooh. So, if I get popular on Sprecher, and then the owner boss man of Sprecher listens to my podcast and totally radically ideologically disagrees with me, he could, according to the EULA, assuming it's a he, it might be a she, right? They could, according to the EULA, they make me agree to before I can even use their platform to express my free speech right to say whatever I damn well please, as long as I'm not defaming anybody, right? Or condoning violence, which I don't. Anybody who's convinced that I'm a violence provoker has never heard one word I've said. I'm adamantly begging for peace of the world and questioning all the things that, in fact, prevent us from reaching peace. Cool. All right. Well, now I am aware, and so are you, dear audience, that they could pull the plug for any reason deemed by the owner and the owner's sole discretion whatsoever, in any way, shape, or form, offensive or violation of the agreement. Cool. Forbidden use. This is good to know. At least they're explicit about things right up front, that they're like, you don't even try this. Forbidden use. The service shall not be used only... The service shall be used only in accordance with these terms. The service shall be used only in accordance with these terms. In other words, if you're not in accordance with these terms, you may not use the service. The terms are the users, plural, as in all users, this applies to anybody who's got a podcast on this show, may not, the first one's obviously a no-brainer, may not reverse engineer, decompile, disassemble, modify, or create derivative work based on Sprecher or any portion of it. I'm not trying to make my own platform. Users may not circumvent any technology used by Sprecher or its licensors to protect content accessible via it. Okay. Users may not copy, store, edit, change, prepare any derivative work of or alter in any way any of the content provided through Sprecher. Cool. In other words, I can't remix or derivative work your show on Sprecher with my show. And neither can anyone else on Sprecher do that to mine, which is cool. I'm glad that that's like number 3 on the forbidden use. Okay. So users may not use any robot, spider, site search retrieval application, or other automated device, process, or means to access, retrieve, scrape, or index any portion of Sprecher or its content. Which means that third-party hackers can't try to, annotate and index and log the content of shows on Sprecher. Cool. I like that. That means I'm protected. Our show is protected. We cannot rent, lease, or sublicense Sprecher. Good to know. Cannot defame, abuse, harass, use threatening practices, threaten or violate the legal rights of others in any other way, such as the rights of privacy and publicity. Fair. I fully intend not to do those things. And I assert that as of right now, of all the time that I've been using Sprecher, I believe I have successfully avoided doing those things to the best of my ability. And, in my defense, any comical statement that may have brushed up against those limits is protected by comedy / theater / what's it called? Societal commentary and farce, lampooning, and parody protections. Users may not disseminate or publish content that is unlawful, obscene, illegitimate, defamatory, or inappropriate. I solemnly swear that to the best of my ability, as a sort of anti-establishment, fuck the system kind of guy, I've totally lived up to that. Even though, fuck the system, users may not misappropriate any account in use by another user. I totally don't, I have no interest in trying to do that. So never have. Users may not register or use the service in order to approach the users to promote, sell, or advertise products or services of any kind through Sprecher in any way. I guess I've got to scrub all references to my social media, because I do that. But every podcast does that, right? Like, isn't that promoting, advertising products or services? I guess I can't talk about my books. I guess I can talk about my books on Facebook. I can't talk about my books in the podcast. I can read to you from my books. That's a blurry line. That's edgy. I don't know. If I read from my own content that I created and reference where it's at, is that advertising a product through Sprecher? Or is that creating content through Sprecher, which is content, me, the words that I already wrote. I wrote them. I want to share them with you. They also happen to simultaneously coexist as written documents over on this other platform. Weird. That one I'm confused by. Also, now that I think about it, users may not register or use the service in order to approach the users to promote, sell, or advertise products or services of any kind through Sprecher in any way. Users may not use Sprecher in any other improper manner that violates the terms. Okay, it's like you're prohibited from doing something that is prohibited, and you're prohibited from doing something that violates the terms, which is prohibited. Users may not disseminate or publish content that is unlawful, obscene, illegitimate, defamatory, or inappropriate. I think I comply with that, but I think others might consider some of what I've said obscene. Some people might consider some of what I've said as inappropriate, but as no one's complained so far, and my listenership is going up, so it's a tricky one. Users may not publish any content that promotes, either directly or indirectly, hate, racism, discrimination, pornography, violence. Amen. I'm promoting the exact opposite of all those things, right? Love, whatever anti-racism is, unity, whatever anti-discrimination is, besides like calling it anti-discrimination, equality, right? What's the opposite of pornography? True, genuine, healing intimacy that is private and not about being on my show. And nonviolence, right? Like, I'm a pacifist, nonviolence guy. That's the core of my thing. Also, people's rights to do whatever they want to do in their real life as long as it's not violating anybody else's stuff. Okay. I don't think I've violated anything yet so far of these agreements. Users may not promote activity that may endanger your life or the life of any other user or lead to physical harm. This includes, but is not limited to, suicide threats, intentional physical trauma, use of illegal drugs, or drinking excessively. Under no circumstances is any user allowed to post any content promoting and or encouraging and or showing any self-destructive violent behavior on Sprecher. I don't think I have. The sound effect of me consuming cannabis is a sound effect. Also, cannabis is legal in California. Although there's a gray area, right? Like, it's technically, we have not finished winning the battle of decriminalizing it at a federal level. So I guess that's one way that if I pissed off the feds with what I say, they could come after the show, me, and anybody with a show on Sprecher. As a way of analysis and commentary on this interestingly worded EULA and these various points. Okay, users may not Where was I? Users may not... We already read that one. Okay. Users may not publish any content or carry out an activity that disrupts, interrupts, harms, or otherwise violates the integrity of Sprecher or any other user's experience or devices. Such activity includes spamming, distributing unauthorized advertisements, phishing, defrauding others, spreading malware or viruses. I solemnly swear, both in real life and in the role play of my literary character, that I am not involved in any of those things to the best of my knowledge. I'm certainly not intentionally. If someone's doing that and using other people's accounts to do it through, it's not me. I have nothing to do with it. I swear. I'm clueless. I'm only just barely going to start teaching myself how to learn how to code and stuff. And so there you go. Next line. Users may not publish any content that exclusively focuses on extreme or gratuitous gore or violence. Done. In compliance. Totally great. Users may not probe, scan, or test the vulnerability of Sprecher, including the services of any network connected to the websites, nor breach the security nor authentication measures on Sprecher, including the services or any other network connected to Sprecher. Thank you for putting that in the EULA. That makes me feel safer. Some of these make me feel like someone's just going to judge my free speech and then yank the plug on my show just because they can choose to. And some of these make me feel like, hey, we're in business together and they're trying to protect me. It's interesting. Moving on. Users may not conceal their identity or steal someone else's identity, or in any case pretend to be or represent a third party if not expressly allowed to do so by such a third party. I, the fictional character, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, wholly owned and copyright operated by R.J. Romero, otherwise also known as Jesus Jones, a.k.a. a couple of other nom de plumes, which are elsewhere cataloged and will be updated quarterly, solemnly swear that I have my own permission and consent to use me, myself, and I, and my own content, and arguably in the future would automatically have the consent of anyone else that joins me in collaboration for the development of content for this podcast show. That includes Gazuda Music. That's a real live band, by the way. They really exist, and if you have never heard their music, go check them out. Excellent. In fact, Josh, I doubt he's listening right now, but Josh just WhatsApped me in between segments today. Hit me up asking if I was in need of a lift to get out of town and get out and do something fun. And I'm like, if you're listening to this, buddy, I want to get out of here and go to your music studio and record some music and stuff collaboratively and some conversation and stuff collaboratively and use it in more podcasts. But I do solemnly swear that I have Gazuda Music and friends' consent for the field recordings that I've made and have remixed and presented in this show, and that all other music that is not Gazuda Music is one of two buckets. It's either music from freemusicarchive.org, which I've referenced, called out, bookmarked, linked in previous revision drafts of reviewing the content for the show and some of the metadata for the show. And if you like free music for your little projects, whatever they are, movies, TikToks, Quibids, I know Quibids is going to become a thing. If you need free music, there's a boatload of it that's available under various different end user license agreement variations for free or very, 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 very low cost over at freemusicarchive.org. So all music that comes from freemusicarchive.org has been used in compliance with the rules and regulations as expressly expressed in the EULA over there, which I read to myself mostly once, and I will probably come around to, if I really do launch this as a permanent segment, it'll be like a wicked long ass always pair of episodes, because these EULAs are crazy effing long and huge. And I must digress and resume. So, oh, by the way, I role play a character to continue finishing addressing this issue, known as the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. But I myself, the actual human being, go by the name of RJ, and you can find me on Facebook. The easiest way to find me on Facebook is to type in Mr. Zeppo, and then boom, you'll find me. Or there's one other person that has in the past used the name Mr. Zeppo for stuff, and they might come up, but they're not the ones doing this podcast. So I'm not trying to pretend to be someone I'm not, and I'm not trying to pretend to be someone that's more famous than me. I'm me. There might be others pretending to be me because I have been catfished for like the null zero, like the null. Not I was about to say nullsec. That's a reference to a video game lingo from a video game that I play. No, I have been catfished in the past. And the internet, the Wild West of InfoWar. Who knows? And obviously, I've got pictures of myself and have had for most of my social media adult life, and who knows what nefarious automated programs have downloaded, copied, screen grabbed that for nefarious purposes. But here it is, right here, folks. If you're listening to this show, to these words right now, I am it. I am the authentic, original, one and only, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, his secret identity, otherwise known as RJ, or his other alter ego, DJZ, and of course, any of the various characters played on this show have either been played by me or by fellow human being actor friends who gave me consent to use their content created in the collaborative creation of content. Resuming, I just wanted to answer that, should anybody be confused about my own compliance with that rule. So, users may not manipulate identifiers in order to disguise or otherwise conceal the origin of their messages or of the content published. I am not disguising or otherwise conceal. It does sound like someone could accuse me of this, and it would seem like maybe I am. I'm writing a book. I'm role-playing the character that is the main character in that book as the character who is the radio DJ of a DJ, like a radio internet show podcast. But I am actually myself and no one else doing it. And does that qualify as breaking that rule that I just read? My paranoid mind says, like, ringing alarm bells, like, yes, you have to drop everything and make it the RJ Romero show and just stop with the Mr. Zeppo. I'm like, but everyone knows that I'm RJ Romero. And Mr. Zeppo is my brand. I don't think I'm in violation of any rules. I'm not pretending to be Harriet Tubman, right? I'm not pretending to be Donald Trump. I'm not pretending to be Stephen Colbert doing a show that's a podcast. I'm me. The incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, because that's sort of one of my actual, like, alter ego self-identifying things, is like, I am this cartoon character in my head. Okay. Don't try to ruin my life by writing a letter to Sprecher and claiming that I'm in violation of this rule. Because I'm not manipulating identifiers in order to disguise or otherwise conceal the origin of these messages. I'm not. That's a really technical thing. That's like pretending that the show is being... I'm in Southern California in my home. I'm not pretending to be in Southern California in someone else's home while actually being in a foreign country. I swear. And legit. Like, in fact, I'm a little scared that I'm identified that I am actually in my home. But you know what I'm saying? Okay. So no, I'm not violating that rule. I do role play a character on the show, but that's got nothing to do with violating that rule. Moving forward. Users may not harvest or collect any personal identifying information of other users, including but not limited to the email address or contact information, by circumventing the privacy setting of users' account on Sprecher or any other means. I shall not do that. If you want to contact me, my email is on my account, and by all means contact me. And then I'm not harvesting or collecting, we're exchanging information. Users may not register or use the service in order to approach the users to promote, sell, or advertise products or services of any kind through Sprecher in any way. That's the second time. That's a repeat, right? That's literally repeated. To promote, so I can't talk about my other projects. I can't talk about my book. Sell or advertise products. I can only talk about my opinion about things or services of any kind through Sprecher. So can I not discuss movies? I can't be a media. I can't be. It might as well say on there, users cannot become internet influencers. Because isn't that the job? Isn't that what getting lots of followers to listen to your show so that they go and buy other products that you endorse? Isn't that the very core of what really makes money on the internet? I'm not allowed to do it on Sprecher according to that rule. Users, well, I guess I'm not approaching other users to promote, sell, or advertise products and services of any kind through Sprecher in any way. Yeah, I mean, everyone is. You're telling me about your book, and then you violated the rule. That's a dilemma. Okay. Users may not indicate or try to imply in any manner that you have a relationship with Sprecher or that Sprecher has endorsed you or your product or services or any third-party products or any services for any purposes. I have gone out of my way to make sure that that's clear that is not the case. I have also fantasized about Sprecher doing that. It is now clear that they will not. So, let it be considered rectified here and now, friends. That's why I wanted to read this on the air. So that we can say boom, that's what it means to be in compliance. Now, are we really in compliance? Is the whole world in compliance? Probably half the shows on Sprecher aren't. How many people who do a show on Sprecher read the entire EULA? Question mark. Not an accusation, question mark. Users may not. Oh, I totally do not have a relationship, nor do I in any way, shape, or form mean to try to imply in any manner that I have had a relationship, because never have I had a relationship with Sprecher, and never has Sprecher endorsed me. I, in fact, have to pay them, and I, in fact, will have to pay them later to run advertisements on my behalf, which is not an endorsement, but a service that they provide, in order to get more of you, the users of Sprecher.com, listeners out there on the interwebs, to listen to my show. It's like doing a show on Sprecher violates the rules of doing a show on Sprecher, I think. Or I've got a very limited and sarcastic view of what any media is, and I think that any show on Sprecher would break the rules, because what else is a show? I digress. Users may not use Sprecher to publish or otherwise disseminate copyrighted material without consent of the copyright holder. Okay. We cannot do that. So maybe even my disclaimer on unauthorized and explicit readings is not enough to cover my ass, because I do read more than a blurb. I need to cut the words that I quote out, because I do read that's copyrighted material. But how can I give you my commentary about that material without reading what the material is? How do I do a show like that? I don't know. And I'm wrestling with it. And I'm also maybe breaking another rule and implicitly sort of implying the request that any listeners, new and retroactively speaking, previous listeners, who had not occurred that my content might be in violation or lacking in compliance with the EULA, now having joined me in listening to me reading the EULA, realizing that at least a handful of episodes should totally just be pulled right off the website right now, which is probably what I'm going to spend my afternoon doing. because I don't want to be so egregiously out of compliance that I'm accused of having done it on purpose. Even though, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more, say no more, I might have maybe been doing it as critique of the world. But then again, it is on. Let's just keep reading before I go off on a spiral of social commentary about these kinds of things. User-generated content available on Sprecher, software license and other intellectual property rights, content provided by the owner. The content provided by the owner is protected by the laws in force on intellectual property rights and by related international treaties. Unless otherwise stated, use of any content is permitted exclusively within the limits set forth in the present clauses. The owner grants the user, for the entire duration of the agreement, a personal, non-assignable, non-exclusive license for the use of such content. Such license is solely intended for personal use of any such content and never for its commercial use, and is limited to the user's device. Therefore, user may not copy and or download and or share beyond the limits set forth below, modify, publish, transmit, sell, sublicense, edit, transfer, assign to a third party or parties, or create derivative works from the content, even of third parties, available on Sprecher, or allow any third party to do so through the use or its device, through the user or its device, even without the user's knowledge. In other words, some third party is explicitly forbidden from getting into my Sprecher account and fucking with my content and collaborating with me by making new content that I didn't make. Such license is solely intended for personal use of any such content and never for its commercial use, and is limited to the user's device. I think this also is meant to be read as like, you're using our platform and you can only use it on your device in compliance with the rules set forth. And even if you're making money on it, it's still private use, I think. It goes on to say, therefore, user may not copy and or download and or share beyond the limits set forth below, modify, publish, transmit, sell, sub-license, or edit, transfer, assign to a third party, or create derivative works from the content, which is what? The program itself, or other people's shows on the Sprecher platform, even of third parties, available on Sprecher, or allow any third party to do so through the user or its device, even without the user's knowledge. I like that part. Where explicitly stated on Sprecher, user may be authorized only for personal use to download or copy and or share some content available through Sprecher for the user's sole personal use, and provide that copyright attribution and all other attributions requested by the owner are correctly reported. I think that means to report that my content that I create, the show that I invite you to listen to, me rambling about stuff, is content that you and anybody else that could be considered a user that is not generating new content, but rather listening, can listen to it for their own private use at home on their device that they listen to the podcast on, and that they cannot make a show based on remixing my content or anybody else's content that is created and hosted on Sprecher. And that also prevents me from doing that to other Sprecher account users or account content creators. Like my show's got to be my show, and it can't be nuggets of other people's shows. And other people's shows can't use nuggets of mine, even if I were to give them permission. It's explicitly prohibited. Because ultimately, everything that's being broadcast on Sprecher is there for private use, and the only way you can make money on it is if you monetize it through Sprecher. Okay, Sprecher widgets. You may include links to Sprecher or include our widgets on your website according to the following terms. You may link to, but not replicate the content available on Sprecher. You must not imply that Sprecher is endorsing or sponsoring your website or your products unless we have given you our prior written consent. Cool. Hey, Sprecher, I'm inviting you to consider sponsoring my show, making me rich and famous, and taking over the spiritual media market. You don't have to. I'm not trying to imply that relationship exists now. It totally does not, dear audience. But I am saying that if anybody from Sprecher ends up listening to this episode wondering, the fuck? At least you consider it a humorous way to, throw that idea at you. And for me to exercise my rights as a content creator, personality figure, person that is a role play of a literary brand character and not a dodging of your rules, right? Those would be two different things. I'm not pretending to be someone that I am illegally not. I am pretending to be someone I have full brand product license ownership of. So it is within my rights to pretend to be the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo because I own that image. I created that image. It is my image to pretend to be. In fact, it is my image. I'm just me. Anyways, I digress. I'm obsessed with that particular caveat. I thought that was really intense wording. I must digress to where we are now. Continuing on about widgets. You must not present false information about Sprecher or its products or services. Check, not doing that. You must not imply that Sprecher, I already did that one. You must not use any content provided by the owner or any of our services except as expressly permitted in these terms and conditions or without prior written permission from us. Perfectly accepted, not doing that. The website must not contain content that is illegal, obscene, or defamatory, or that could be construed as disastrous, offensive, or controversial. I don't own a website at the moment, other than Facebook, and I don't think any of my content there can be considered any of those things. Except for maybe borderline controversial. I don't think it's controversial, but some others might. And I just hope and pray that I don't attract a bunch of haters that want to write letters to Sprecher because I gave them the idea and try to get me yanked off the air. Please don't do that. Amen and thank you. Wrapping up the widgets section. The website must not support, endorse, or encourage piracy or the unauthorized exploitation of intellectual property rights. Okay. On your website, you shall conspicuously post a privacy policy by means of which you explain to your users how the widget works and how we help you monetize your user-generated content or user content generator, UGC, and analyze and measure your listenership. Cool. If you are linking to or embedding our widgets in a third-party web space, it is your sole responsibility to make sure that you have permission to do so. By linking or embedding our widgets, you agree that you do and will continue to comply with the above requirements. We reserve the right to deny permission to embed our widgets or block Sprecher widgets at any time for any reason in our sole and absolute discretion. That's pretty intense. So even if you're in total perfect compliance, they could choose to just shank you. Okay then. I could throw some commentary down, but I think I'll just continue. User-generated content. Users are responsible for their own content and that of third parties that they share through Sprecher, that they create, deliver, and post on or through Sprecher, or that they transfer by any other means. Users confirm that they have all the necessary consents from third parties whose data and or content they share with the owner and hereby indemnify the owner for any liability or claim arising against the owner in connection with illegal distribution of third-party content or unlawful use of this service. The owner does not moderate the content provided by user or by third parties, but it may choose to suspend or terminate display of any such content if... Bullet point 1. Complaints are received from other users. Bullet point 2. It receives and accepts a DMCA, quote, takedown notice that it believes to be valid or any intellectual property infringement claim. Bullet point 3. It believes that it must do so in anticipation of or as part of legal actions. Bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4. Action is requested by the authorities. Bullet point 5. It believes that such content remaining accessible on or through Sprecher may pose a risk to users, third parties, the service's availability, and or the owner itself. Taken as a whole, I think I could win an argument saying that as fan fiction, as nested fan fiction, I should be able to reference and quote all the media that I referenced and quote, because I always, in good faith, intended, when I had enough money for staff and lawyers and the time to write all the letters, I always meant and intended in good faith to write all the right letters, to get all the proper concessions and licensing permissions for any and all content that might require it. But I have, as of yet, not quite had the time to. Obviously, that's not quite the way things are worded on the EULA. I really like this. I really like this part. Users confirm that they have all the necessary consents from third parties whose data and or content they share with the owner, and hereby indemnify the owner for any liability or claim arising against the owner in connection with illegal distribution of third-party content or unlawful use of service. The owner does not moderate the content provided by user or third parties, but it may choose to suspend or terminate display of any such content if. I'm glad that they are not Big Brother, overlord, like censoring content. Although it would be cool if I could just say whatever and bleepy bleep automated bleepers would automatically bleepy bleep out, because then I would have whole episodes that are just like bleep and words that are me rambling that are not part of bleep as I read books that I think are important. But I ask you, what's more important? Well, I hereby totally consent that I indemnify Sprecher for my use of the content. And I pray and hope that they continue to not actively monitor it, because I do think free speech, motherfuckers, I bend the rules a little bit, right? And this is still the land of the free and home of the brave. I think that the greater good demands it, and thus I pray that the audience isn't going to be full of haters that go and rage complained against it. But I'm also savvy. This is the first time I've read the EULA that I've been working with in full, focused, and critical self-analysis detail. I didn't realize that some of this stuff does sort of mean that I should definitely go back and clip some content out of my shows, right? And that I should avoid doing things that same way in the future in order to just avoid problems, which I'm gladly going to do. In fact, I'm swearing now to hop in my time machine and travel forward and or backwards in time, and maybe a little bit inwards in that extra dimension, and do all the work required to get the content up to snuff, as it were. As long as I don't get preemptively shut down for being naive and ill-informed. But taken as a whole, all 5 bullet points, I don't, no one's complained for 3 years. I have not received a takedown notice or intellectual and property infringement rights. And the times when I've been confused about whether or not my action was bordering on it, I've asked for permission in the moment and said, like, hey, I'm asking for permission now for the greater good, for the facilitation of the entire human species. I believe your content, which has its various rights, must be talked about and shared and quoted from. You'll forgive me if I push the boundaries on that a little bit. Okay. But I digress. So, the next section reads UCG representation and warranties, and the wording is almost identical, but for clarity, it's worth reading aloud. Users are responsible for their own content. Thank you. And that of third parties that they share through Sprecher. Awesome. I am, in the future, with permission granted, coming backwards in time to fix the errors of the past. that we create, deliver, and post on or through Sprecher, or that they transfer by any other means. Users confirm that they all have the necessary consent from third parties whose data and or content they share with the owner and hereby indemnify the owner. Yes, 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 yes. Yada, yada, yada. Exactly like the previous section. The owner does not moderate the content provided by user or third parties, but it may choose to suspend any content if complaints are received. This is a weird duplication. I guess they really, really wanted to cover themselves up in this. If complaints are received, if DMCA's takedown notices or intellectual property infringement claims are received, if it believes it must do so in anticipation of legal action because of such notices, if action is requested by authorities, or if it believes the content remaining accessible through Sprecher may pose a risk to all users, third parties, the service's availability, and or the owner itself. That would be some pretty outrageous content, right? I don't think I've said anything that threatens the existence of the internet, right? Rights over UGC. By creating, delivering, submitting, posting, or displaying user-generated content on or through Sprecher, the user grants non-exclusive, royalty-free, worldwide, irrevocable, perpetual, and with the right to sublicense to the owner without territorial limits to use, copy, reproduce, process, adapt, modify, publish, transmit, display, and distribute such content in any media via distribution methods currently available or developed later. In other words, I give Sprecher full rights to just send my content everywhere, because that's how they can generate the income that they're going to generate by plastering it with ads, and then they're going to give me a chunk of it, right? With respect to streaming live and pre-recorded audiovisual works, the rights granted by you hereunder terminate once you delete your UGC from Sprecher, or in general, when you delete your account, except when any such UGC has been shared with other users within Sprecher, or the owner has decided to use UGC for promotional and or advertising purposes, as long as the owner had obtained consent from the user. So, I can delete my content unless it's so popular that Sprecher uses it in its advertisings for itself. That would be radical. Okay. The user must be aware of the fact that UGC removal may take reasonable time to be processed from backup and other systems used by Sprecher. Further information, the user kindly requests the owner at the contact details provided present in document. Content provided by third parties. The owner does not moderate content or links provided by third parties before their publication on Sprecher. The owner is not responsible for content provided by third parties or for its availability. You're indemnified, Sprecher. It's my bad. I'm going to fix the times where I may have sort of nudged up against that rule. Software license. Sprecher grants users revocable, personal, nationwide, royalty-free, non-assignable, and non-exclusive license to use the softwares and or any other technical means embedded in the service provided by Sprecher. This license is for the sole purpose of enabling users to use the service, and in doing so within the limits and compliance of this agreement and or any other applicable rules, user is required to use the service in accordance with its own intellectual and industrial property rights. The softwares related to the service, like any other copyright or any other intellectual property rights, are the exclusive property of the owner and or its licensors. The user does not acquire any right or title with respect to the softwares and acknowledges that their use is non-exclusive and non-assignable, only for the duration of the service usage via remote connectivity, via internet for the provision of services under the agreement. The right to use the softwares does not grant any rights to the original source code. No, thank you, don't want it. All techniques, algorithms, and procedures contained in the software and their documentation are therefore information protected by copyright and sole property of the owner or its licensors, and therefore may not be used in any way by the user for purposes other than those set forth in these terms. Other intellectual property rights. All trademarks, nominal or figurative, all other marks, trade names, services, marks, word marks, illustrations, images, logos, and or copyrights that appear concerning Sprecher, and all rights in and the user interface feature and functionality of Sprecher and underlying software, including code, owners, IP, are and remain the exclusive property of the owner or its licensors and are protected by the laws in force on trademarks and by related international treaties. The owner does not grant you any rights whatsoever in any owner's IP except to the extent necessary for you to use the service in compliance with the agreement. All trademarks and all of the marks, trade names, service marks, word marks, yada yada, repetition for the sake of repeating yourself, and are protected by applicable trademark laws relevant to international treaties. Does not own the aforementioned intellectual property rights and may use only them with limits in accordance with the contracts included such parties for the purposes outlined herein. In other words, I can say Sprecher.com because I'm using Sprecher.com to make my podcast. But I cannot lie about Sprecher.com and say that they are sponsoring me because they're not. Clear? Clear. Done. Cool. Purchasing process and rights of the user. In-app purchases. Sprecher provides Apple device users the opportunity to get in-app purchases. In order to get such app purchases, users must follow the indications given by the online store, which can vary according to the device, Apple Store, or Google Play. In this case, the user is also required to check and accept the terms and conditions set forth. Purchasing of a subscription plan. Further details are available. The plans can be found in the dedicated pages of Sprecher. Reoccurring subscription, methods of payment, right of withdrawal for European customers. Technically doesn't apply to me because I'm in America. Limitation to the rights of withdrawal. Notwithstanding the above, the consumer acknowledges and accepts and acknowledges the right of withdrawal does not apply to the contract supply of services after the full performance of the service. Professional performance initially began with the express consent of the user and their agreement to the whole to withdraw. Blah, blah, blah. Refund and order of correction. I'm not going to withdraw. Disclaimer of warranties and limited liabilities. Owner provides the services to you strictly on an as-is basis, the maximum intent permitted by the applicable law. All the all-cap stuff, which is the most boring. Errors, omissions, inaccuracies of any content, personal injury or property damage of any, the limited liability of non-EU users, limitations of liability for European users, indemnification. You agree to defend, indemnify, and hold harmless the owner, its parent, sibling, and other subsidiary corporations, if any, and officers, directors, employees, and advisors, and agents thereof, from and against any and all claims, damages, obligations, losses, liabilities, costs, or debt, expenses, including but not limited to attorney's fees and expenses arising from your use of the service. That's me, but I guess also you as a listener. Your violation of this agreement and your violation of any third-party right, including without limitation to copyright, property, privacy right, or any claim that your content caused damage to a third party. Okay? So, indemnified. They are indemnified, and they don't care. And they will play my things until someone complains about it. And isn't that great? We're almost through most of it, but I'm going to give you a prolonged music break to cleanse the palate until we wrap things up. Here we go. Some music that I made. Where'd it go? Terrell Journal new theme I was thinking about using. But here you go. Check it out. Welcome back. This is the Warnings and Disclaimers episode, part 17. Let's get through it, folks. Thanks for tuning in. I actually am glad we're doing this. It should be pretty obvious why, right? Like, we don't read EULAs, and we start using these platforms thinking we know what we're doing, and we really don't, right? And I've been foolhardishly doing things that flirt with, and maybe shouldn't get me kicked off the platform, but, to somebody who really is annoyed by my overall worldview, and especially if at any point some, powerful interest wanted to silence me, they could use some of these, poorly aligned content choices in my show. And the fact that I just simply hadn't read the EULA to just file a complaint and get me busted, right? So I gotta tighten up the ship and make sure that the content that I generate is, clean as a whistle. And in order to do that, we got full transparency going, and I'm reading to you the last big chunk of the EULA for the platform that I hope together we're going to build an interesting, community centered around the discussion that we have here on this podcast. Okay. Services provided by third parties. Users may use third-party services or content included in Sprecher, but they must be aware of these third parties' terms and conditions and have given consent to them. Under no circumstances will the owner be deemed liable in relation to the proper functionality or availability or both of third-party services. Compliance with third-party terms of use. Sprecher is a video platform, which is really weird because it doesn't use any video as far as I know. But it's describing itself as such. Sprecher is a video platform that allows users to broadcast together from anywhere using any device, simulcast to multiple social networks, and third-party platforms. Example, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, etc. Interesting. That must have been what it started off as, and then it got spun down into an audio only? I don't know. Or maybe there's a different package, a different platform with a different name that uses the video technology now, and Sprecher is only audio. It's interesting weirdness to the text. But continuing. Notwithstanding the above, Sprecher is not endorsed, sponsored, or certified by any such third party, and nothing herein contained shall constitute a partnership between or joint venture by Sprecher and the third providers, or constitute any party and agent to the others. By using Sprecher, the user acknowledges and agrees to be bound also to these third-party providers' terms of service and privacy policies, which users are requested to read and accept before using the services. Does anyone ever do that? Miscellaneous. Filing claims under DMCA. Under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DMCA, you can request that the owner remove material that infringes a copyright. To do so, you must file a document that is known as a DMCA, quote, takedown notice, which must comply with the requirements specified by the law. In particular, your takedown notice must include a physical or electronic signature of a person authorized to act on behalf of the owner of an exclusive right that is allegedly infringed. 2. Identification of the copyrighted work claimed to have been infringed, or if multiple copyrighted works at a single online site are covered by a single notification, a representative list of such works. 3. Identification of the material that is claimed to be infringed, or to the subject of infringing activity, and that is to be removed or access to which is to be disabled, and information reasonably sufficient to permit the service provider to locate the material. Information reasonably sufficient to permit the service provider to contact the complaining party, such as an address, cell phone number, and, if available, an electronic email address at which the complaining party may be contacted. A statement that the complaining party has a good faith belief that the use of the material in the manner complained of is not authorized by the copyright owner, its agent, or the law. A statement that the information of the notification is accurate under the penalty of perjury, that the complaining party is authorized to act on behalf of the owner of an exclusive right that is allegedly infringed. In other words, The only people who can correctly file a takedown notice under the DMCA law are people duly authorized to represent those whose content is being shared. And so, like, if I read from the Bible, who's going to submit a takedown notice? The Roman Catholic Church, right? Probably. Or whoever is publishing that particular version of the Bible. If I'm reading from the New International Version, then the publishers of the New International Version might get a little hinky-dinky and get upset at me for reading from it, right? If I'm reading from a book I borrowed from the library or own in my own private library of books that I paid for, then only the legal agents of that author, having heard a specific episode in which their content was commented on and read from overly extensively, should they be offended and choose, only they can send in takedown notices and or other copyright infringement letters, which is cool and reassuring. Because whenever I do read from a specific book, I always give you a really, really honest, heartfelt plea to whoever owns the rights of this book. Please know that I'm doing this because I want more people to read your book. And if I had staff, I would have sent you a lovely letter and paid you a lovely fee to let me talk about your book on your podcast. But I don't yet. And so I'm doing it this way, which sort of skirts and infringes the law technically, but also, as long as you don't complain about it, I won't get busted for it, and no one else is going to care, and the audience is going to learn about your book and hopefully go read and buy more copies. Who's going to say no to that, right? Only a raging dick who is like a misanthrope and doesn't love humanity is going to do that. Okay, that's good to read. That's reassuring to me, I guess. Self-parodying by actually reading all this live on my own show. Okay, so those are the things in particular takedown notice must include. And you, the infringed upon party, if Warner Brothers wants to send me a thing for talking about the Joker, although they can't because I didn't play any of their music. I did a rough draft of movie review of of Blade Runner, which I do believe is directed by Ridley Scott. And on a couple of those segments, I hit record and started rambling while there was before I hit pause on the movie, right? And so if I use a little bit of leftover sound effecty movie bits from the movie as I begin my commentary, the people who own the rights to that movie could choose to be real dicks and send me a DMCA takedown, cease and desist, copyright infringement notice, or they can realize that I'm bringing them more earballs and eyeballs and attention to their product, and probably encouraging people to go buy it or rent it or watch it even for free somewhere on the interwebs that gets them more numbers and more revenue. So, okay, cool. So when it says you must send the takedown notice, it means you, Warner Brothers, you, Alan Watts, because I do read a lot from Alan Watts, and I love his work, and I think more people should read it. You must send this takedown notice in physical form using the content information provided in this document. But before you do, I implore you, consider the goal I'm striving for. I'm not just doing this just to save my own life, which is slowly falling apart, by working from home and making money by being an internet radio celebrity. Knock on wood, right? I'm not chasing celebrity for celebrity's sake. I'm chasing it for the betterment of the world, intellectually and spiritually. And if it's your book I'm quoting from, it's because I think you've got something to contribute. That's a compliment. Okay, I digress. If you knowingly misrepresent in your notification that the material or activity is infringing, you will be liable for any damages, including costs and attorney's fees incurred by us or the alleged infringer, i.e. me, as the result of our relying upon such misrepresentation in removing or disabling access to the material or activity claimed to be infringing. Nice. They are out to protect their content creators. Providing the service. From time to time, the owner may change certain aspects of the service, such as adding or deleting certain features. The owner may also decide to suspend or terminate the services altogether. If the services are terminated, the owner will work with you to enable you to withdraw your information in accordance with applicable law. The services might not be available at times you expected, whether because of the software or the network problems or events that are known as force majeure, such as acts of God, labor actions, and or other disruptions beyond the reasonable control of the owner. The services might not be available also because the services are undergoing maintenance. Understood. Changes to this agreement. The owner reserves the right to amend or otherwise modify this agreement at any time, informing you by publishing you notice through Sprecher or otherwise communicating it with you. Such changes will only affect the relationship with you for actions you have accepted after you have accepted the new agreement. Previous versions, which are archived by the owner, will govern the relationship prior to your acceptance. You can email the owner for a copy of any previous version. Your continued use of the service after such changes will signify your agreement with and acceptance of this agreement with its revised terms. If you do not wish to be bound by the changes, then your only recourse is to discontinue the use of the service. Assignment. This agreement and any rights and licenses granted in this agreement cannot be transferred or assigned by you without the owner's prior written permission, but may be assigned by the owner without restriction. Contacts. You consent to the owner contacting you by your telephone number if provided, or your email address. All communication relating to Sprecher must be sent using the contacts stated in this document. If you send a communication by email, you must have valid confirmation of receipt to provide promptly to the owner if requested. Cancellation and termination of the agreement. You may terminate the agreement by canceling your account at any time by emailing the owner at the contact details provided in this document and then following the specific instructions provided in our response. Notwithstanding the provisions set forth under the section of deleting users' accounts and account termination, we reserve the right to terminate the agreement and cancel your account for the following cases. In case of discontinuation of the service, God forbid, may they never discontinue this program. I love it. In case you fail to honor your obligation to pay for the services you purchased, God forbid, I want to make money with this program, not lose money because of this program. In case we suspect that you have engaged in any fraudulent or, in general, illegal activity in connection with Sprecher, or in case of your infringement of the agreement, I humbly agree to the agreement and humbly agree to work to always be in compliance with it, if requested to do so by any public authority for any reason. Can't stop that, right? Let's hope and pray, dear friends and listeners, that the government never shuts my show down. Because I'm not here to, antagonize the government. I'm here to help heal the human species, because that's what the human species is supposed to be doing. In my humble opinion, I think. I could be wrong. Without prejudice to any further action we might bring before the competent courts in order to protect or safeguard our rights, upon termination of the agreement by either of the party for any reason, we will cease providing you with the service, and you will no longer be able to access your account. Otherwise, or unless otherwise stated in the agreement, you will not be entitled to any refunds or fees, or prorated or otherwise. Any outstanding balance owed to Sprecher for your use of services through the effective date of such termination will immediately become due and payable in full. The user-generated content that you publish will be taken offline unless it has been used by the owner for advertising and or promotional purposes and shared by any other users of Sprecher. Okay. If at the date of termination of the agreement there are any outstanding fees you owe us, you will receive one final invoice via email at the email address you provided upon registration. Once that invoice has been paid in full, you will not be charged again, and we shall consider our relationship terminated. Entire agreement. This agreement, together with any other legal notices published by the owner, constitute the entire agreement between owner and you concerning the services. Serverability. If any provision of this agreement is deemed invalid or unenforceable by a court of competent jurisdiction, the invalidity or unenforceability of such provision shall not affect the validity of the remaining provisions, which shall remain in full force and effect. No waiver. Owner's failure to assert any right or provision under this agreement shall not constitute a waiver of any such right or provision. Any waiver shall not be deemed a further or continuing waiver of such right or any other term. Governing law and jurisdiction. Sprecher is controlled and operated by Vox Nest, Inc., and this agreement shall be governed by the laws of the place where the owner has its registered office, without regard to principles of conflict of laws. Without regard to principles of conflict of laws. You agree to be bound by such laws and to submit to the jurisdiction of the courts of the state of New York in connection with the interpretation or application of the agreement. The United Nations Convention on Contracts for the International Sale of Goods will not apply to these terms of services and is hereby expressly excluded. I don't know if that's good or bad. An exception applies whenever the user can be qualified as a consumer, in which case the court where the consumer has his or her domicile or residence has sole jurisdiction. As this is interesting. That's a weird catch-22. So does the state of New York rule over how I'm supposed to interpret the EULA that I'm agreeing to create the show that I'm creating in order to be, a fully productive member of society, as it were, vis-a-vis my own creative powers and my own user-generated content, which I'm trying to monetize and commodify, since I'm doing that at home and I'm buying this service, no matter how much money I make from Sprecher, should I ever make any? I don't at the moment. In theory, I hope to do so in the future, right? No matter how much money my podcast, let's say it goes viral, it becomes super popular, and I never, ever, ever flirt with any violation of the terms of agreement. Who actually has jurisdiction? New York or the local court where my domicile has residence, and my residence is here in Southern California? Because in order to create my podcast, which is my product that I must use Sprecher to create, I'm literally being a consumer of the Sprecher platform, right? I'm consuming their tool and using it. Interesting. Crazy stuff. That's why no one reads EULAs. Because if you read them, you realize that the whole world is fucked and we can't go anywhere and do anything, and we can't have nice things. Is there anything else I need to read? Yes. We consider the term, as we were in the Join the Monetization Program. We consider the Sprecher terms of use to be part of this agreement, and you acknowledge that you agree to them by the continued use of our platform. Sprecher reserves the right to change the terms of this agreement, but will notify you by announcement on the Sprecher website if we do so. Use of the Sprecher player and RSS feeds. We encourage you to place the Sprecher embeddable web player on any website or blog that are owned and controlled by you. And we also encourage you to make sure that the RSS feed provided by Sprecher is the one used for syndication to other channels like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, etc. When you use the Sprecher embedded player and the RSS feed, you allow our systems to obtain complete and accurate data documenting audience activity of your content whenever it is distributed. And here, forgive the pedanticness, friends, we get to some important stuff. But as it is important, and we want to sort of cleanse the mental palate, and I need to take a drink of water before my throat explodes, we're going to pause here for just a moment. Thanks for your patience, friends. Here's some more of Tarot Journal New Theme version 2. DJ Zed and Purple Chaos. No. What's the name of that band? Purple Motion, the Political Nonsense. And welcome back. Continuing with the use of Sprecher player and RSS feeds, EULA content, it reads, quote, when you use the Sprecher's embedded player and the RSS feed, you allow our system to obtain complete and accurate data documenting audience activity of your content whenever it is distributed. We then use this data to negotiate better terms with sponsors and advertisers on your behalf and improve our platform and services. You agree to our use for any valid business purpose of all data that we collect related to your content or any related audience or advertiser information. Next section, ad insertion software. Sprecher uses audio ads through advertisement insertion software, quote, ad software, which is used to embed ads or display them in connection with your content. You acknowledge that Sprecher, and not you, owns the ad software and all technology, parentheticals, including services, processes, and algorithms, and parenthetical, and intellectual property related to it. You also agree that you do not have any right to use the ad software for purposes that are not stated in this agreement, and you will not copy nor attempt to reproduce it. Agreed, friends. Not going to waste my time with that. Tracking. Sprecher uses tag information and the ad software to track and measure ad impressions. These ad impressions determine the amount of revenue paid to Sprecher by advertisers it secures to sponsor the ads. The revenues received by Sprecher from these advertisers are reduced by fees and expenses related to creating and serving the ads. Quote, net revenues. Revenue sharing. For audio video ads served in connection with your content on the Sprecher site and Sprecher owned applications and in downloads served across syndication channels fed via your Sprecher RSS feed, you will receive 60% of the net revenues received by Sprecher for audio ads and sponsorships secured by Sprecher on your behalf. Payments. Sprecher will determine the net revenues due to you from a valid ad clicks and ad impressions displayed in connection with your content on a monthly basis. Your portion of the net revenues will accrue in United States dollars and will generally be deposited into your account, referred to as account, quote unquote, no later than 60 days after the end of the month in which the ad clicks and ad impressions were processed. So, if I activate the monetization program now at the end of February, I'll get 1 week plus the month of March, which will be calculated and accrued and be dumped out 60 days after the end of March. Sprecher is only obligated to pay net revenues to you via one of the supported forms of payment if and when the balance in your account accumulates to a value of $10 over any time frame, quote, eligible balance. Let me read that sentence again. Sprecher is only obligated to pay net revenues to you via one of the supported forms of payment, which in my case will be PayPal, if and when the balance in your account accumulates to a value of $10 over any time frame. Sprecher may determine and or change supported forms of payment at any time in its sole discretion, provided that we try to provide you with advance notice of any such change. Payments of net revenues may be reduced by any credits or similar offset attributable to net revenues erroneously paid in prior months. For example, if an advertiser later adjust payments with respect to your content. You will receive payment of the eligible balance at the end of the monthly cycle when it has become eligible for disbursement pursuant to this paragraph. You agree that Sprecher will not be held responsible for net revenues it is unable to remit to you due to an inaccurate account information or insufficient accrual of net revenues to the target value of $10 set forth in this agreement. You agree to... So in other words, if you only accrue $7.50, you can't sue them for $7.50. Like, it's just going to be stuck there forever. Until it reaches more than $10 and is at that balance. And then they'll dump out $10 for you that next monthly cycle. Okay. You agree to comply with all tax laws and pay all taxes or charges owed to the IRS or your state and county tax authority in connection with net revenues you receive from Sprecher. That's important. I had not read that as of yet and was not aware of it being a thing. Now I know, right? I got to be really savvy about the money, if any at all, comes in from running a podcast on Sprecher over time, so that in like a year's time or 2 years' time, it's a matter of quarterly running my own tax on that income and paying it so that I'm not fucking myself at the end of the year on taxes. And yeah, I know all about taxation as theft. I already did a thing about that. Okay. I already read that. Sprecher acknowledges and agrees that so long as your content continues to earn sufficient net revenue under the terms of this agreement, and we have current account information allowing us to locate you, we will continue to pay your share of the net revenues that accrue. Let me start over. Sprecher acknowledges and agrees that so long as your content continues to earn sufficient net revenues under the terms of this agreement, and we have current account information and allowing us to locate you, we will continue to pay you your share of net revenues that accrue to an eligible balance of over $10. This commitment stands even if you cease uploading new content to the Sprecher website. So like if this were my last episode, making it my first episode, right? If I keep it, if I just stopped recording episodes today and I click yes and it becomes monetized, then from now on, even if I never uploaded another episode again, for every new download, some calculation will be calculated. But tragically, I'm fairly certain, I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain that all my past downloads do not get tabulated, right? Like, I'm not going to get paid for the nearly 13,000 downloads and whatever that would have generated in ad revenue that exists already in my analytics. But I will get paid, in theory, 60 days pursuant of the final numbers of any given month. So if, starting in March, if my numbers for March for total downloads of episodes, old or new, hit, 3,000 or something, or 2,000, then, that'll be worth it. Because each of those downloads will be tabulated and calculated, I think, according to my understanding of reading all of this so far. Let's see if that remains true. Yeah. Even if you cease uploading new content to the Sprecher website. I fully intend to upload new content to the Sprecher website all effing year long, and next year as well, and the year after that, because this is going to turn into we are becoming a national movement of like, hey, media-scape, we need this voice, we need this dialogue, we need this conversation, and it needs to have 5-6 other people here in the room with me having it. I digress. The EULA continues in the following way. Please note that payments originating from Sprecher are currently made exclusively through PayPal. In order to receive payments, you must own a valid PayPal account and its associated email addresses. Yes, done. Confidentiality. In the event you are exposed during the pendency of this agreement to the inner workings of any of Sprecher's business processes, you agree to keep this information confidential and not to disclose it to any third parties. This obligation shall continue even if you no longer participate in the Sprecher revenue sharing program. Okay. I can't imagine that there's anything that crazy, unless, of course, you're secretly Hydra and you're scheming horrible, horrible things. But in which case, then that's a different matter. That's comic book land, right? You're not. You're Sprecher.com, and you're helping my podcast be accessed by listeners around the world on the interwebs so that we can create a community around this radio talk show podcast show. No employment. One of the final clauses here. Your participation in the Sprecher revenue sharing program and agreement to the terms of this agreement do not make you an employee of Sprecher, and you acknowledge that you and Sprecher do not have an employer-employee relationship of any kind whatsoever. I totally misspoke there and added a word that wasn't in the text. You further acknowledge that any net revenues you receive under the terms of this agreement do not constitute wages or compensation for your work you have performed for Sprecher. Of course not. They represent compensation for my content being on the air in your monetization program and delivering ads to all the ears listening to and downloading my show. Renewal and termination. Your enrollment in the Sprecher revenue sharing program will be automatically renewed on an annual basis until either you or Sprecher gives 30-day prior written notice to the other that you will no longer participate in the program. General rules. Your compliance with this agreement must include your commitment to the following. You don't generate invalid ad requests and ad impressions either by hand, bots, automated programs, or similar devices. I swear on whatever holy document that I have not yet ever employed those devices, nor do I ever intend to employ those devices. I also continue to read from the EULA that your compliance with this agreement must include your commitment to the following. Invalid ad impressions are those which parenthetical I1, originate from your own IP address or your computers under your control. 2, are solicited by payment of money. I've never paid anyone money. False representation or requests for end users to download, play audio files. I've never falsely represented anything, but I have asked listeners to recommend the show. So I should stop doing that, and I should delete that from all previous audio files, I guess. And 3 I's are commingled with significant number of invalid downloads or plays. Okay. Please refrain from using material in your content that breaches any terms of this agreement or the Sprecher terms of use. Yes, although I need to pull some episodes and scrub them, only because I was unaware at the time and not fully able to enforce my own compliance, right? Please refrain from any fraudulent, misleading, or false activities. I promise you that I will indeed refrain from fraudulent, misleading, or false activities. I am creating performance art within which there will be narrative fiction, but I am never, ever, ever trying to mislead anyone. I'm trying to be very clear and transparent about what I'm doing. I'm often very self-referential and self-identifying, and I'm not pretending to be anything that I'm not actually doing, right? And of course, this is part of the special warnings and disclaimers that come along with like the idea of giving tarot readings, which is one of the features of the spin-off show, Tarot Journal. And, I've got a whole special disclaimer bit for that, which is not sitting in front of me, which maybe I would pull up right now. Here we go. Instead of just referencing it, we're going to get right to it and read it out loud. Warning, mature content. Warning, the universe is an illusion. Asterisk, that is a theory stipulated by various sources and one that I, in my humble opinion, agree with. Please be advised, this podcast has an element within it of a this podcast is? That's a very poorly constructed sentence. That's very confusing and has also got a completely incorrectly used word in it that is throwing me off entirely. And I wrote it. This podcast is a work of fiction in that it is a real-life opinion show role-played by a literary character / brand, which is being contextualized in a book series. While designed to be inserted into a work of fiction, this and all my podcasts are also intended as commentary on our current historical moment in actual, factual real life. Please note, your identity as a listener / participant of the audience will remain semi-anonymous. I'm not here to out anyone, but also, according to the rules of Sprecher, I'm not here to obfuscate anyone's identity either. I can't let you pretend to be someone that you're not on my show. This show is, according to me, the author of it, intended to be viewed, listened to, heard, consumed, and otherwise enjoyed as a form of educational entertainment or entertaintional edutainment. In other words, I'm presenting this and sharing my thoughts and opinions either directly or dramatized in short story format or poetry format or expressed however other way I might express it. It is intended to be considered for entertainment purposes with a little bit of, sharing of opinion and spiritual theory. Any and all spiritual, quote, guidance that might be given on this or any other subsequent spin-off shows that I am producing on the Sprecher platform should be understood as being given without agreeing to any liability for any of your future actions, and that's inclusive of any present, current, and potential future audience member listening to my show. The character / brand / literary identity known in short as Mr. Zeppo makes no actual claim to any supernatural or psychic powers, but is described in the literary context of the books being written as possibly having said kinds of abilities for the purposes of the story arc and narrative. In terms of the podcast and any of its spin-offs, if you choose to submit your questions to the show, you are implicitly giving the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo and any other guests or panelists permission to read your comment and to openly discuss your comment and or question as part of the user-generated content that is the main body of the show. Warning, some future versions of this show may include such content as, quote, cartomancy, end quote, and or, quote, tarot reading, end quote, and all such activities of, quote, divinatory oracle, end quote, should be considered a form of entertainment and respected as a form of my own actual spiritual practice. Believe it or not, that one thing can be two things at the same time. That making art is in real and practical ways my spiritual practice. And if you came to a play, I would force you to listen to the same warning. You're watching a play, which to me is spiritual practice, and you are choosing to consume as entertainment. and we are agreeing to those two seemingly mismatched modalities. Any resulting tarot readings requested by audience members that are conducted, quote, on the air in any past, present, and or future episodes of this, the Tarot Journal and Cartomancy subsegment of the Almost Daily Zencast, which is the home of Good Morning Trumptopia, are considered readings for the radio hour for the entertainment of the podcast audience. Warning, remember, you cannot bend the spoon. Not at least until you realize that there is, in fact, no spoon. Warning and proviso, no third-party inquiries. You, as audience member, should you submit a question or request for guidance of any nature, your question must be about you and yourself and not about any third parties unaware of the show. Warning, this is all entertainment. As such, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo and the creative artist behind that brand is not responsible for anything that you do as a result of having listened to the show or having had your tarot, quote, read on the show. Neither is anyone else affiliated with me or my podcasts. Dear readers and listeners, we are all full-grown ass adults, persons pretending to be fully in charge of their own destiny and expressive of free will and with a fully developed consciousness. Accepting that and understanding that, I must say that you, and only you, not I nor any other being, are 100% in charge of your destiny. That's who's in charge of it. It's you. You wouldn't want it any other way. But it is my deep and sincere honor and pleasure to be welcomed into your private space of the inner workings of your mind, to be allowed to ramble and to share with you my thoughts, my opinions, my observations, my assessments, and my thoughts seeking to discern, based on my lifetime of experience, that which might quite possibly be better for us as a species than what we're all busy doing right now, which is primarily fighting about political ideology, which is deeply encoded with conditioning that makes us want to fight about political ideology instead of fixing the problems that are created by political ideology. Bum, bum, bum. Warning, warning, warning. Listening at your own risk. This podcast is not intended for the politically correct or weak-minded. Enter at the risk of possibly opening up your own mind and of potentially questioning your own reality. I have been your host, the incredibly tedious and pedantic, the soul-searching, establishment-questioning, entheogenic, cannabis mystic, fractal practitioner of holographic meditation. The one, the only. The fictional cartoon character known as the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Thank you for listening to my show, and thank you for being there for me the last 3 years, those of you who've been listening that long. And thank you for joining us now at the midway moment, the bell curve moment, or maybe not quite midway. We are at the end of the first quarter of what is an 8-quarter long arc, if that makes sense. If you can have 8 quarters, right? That's 2 sets of 4. And we are about, dear friends and listeners, about to enter a new, hopefully prosperous era of the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. We are about to fill in the forms required to monetize the show. Why? Because I want to focus and completely dedicate my creative abilities towards the full spectrum of art that I can be making, right, from home, instead of running off and doing. Where is the email? Show me my email. Personal info. I guess it's under personal info. There it is. Trying to capitalize on this sci-fi free market madness that is available to us, and try to imagine yourself in my shoes, hustling to try and make it in this digital marketplace, being a boomer or a boomer adjacent, not quite boomer age, but I might as well be old enough, according to some of them young whippersnappers. I can't apparently even ask you to listen to my own show, because then I will be technically in violation of the end user license agreement. But that sounds a bit ridiculous. Listen to my show. You've just listened to me read the EULA of the show and of how it is monetized. What? The PayPal confirmation email does not match. Did I miss NONSEQUIT? Talk about some typos. NONSEQUITER. Okay, you gotta check your spelling, folks. No, fix the invalid fields and try again. Oh, look at that. Man, I am blind as a bat. Just a whole letter is missing in that one. Okay, that's been corrected. 3rd time's a charm. Boom, verified. Okay, let me open up that account over here. I just had to register my official email to activate my PayPal account to the Sprecher website, blah, 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 details and things, right? I've got to log into that. That's important. Did my taxes yesterday, because maybe it's theft and maybe it's how we organize civic activity and pay for it. And maybe the argument about those two sides is maybe a little bit of a distraction from actually solving the corruption in the way in which it's handled. Who knows? But what I do know for a fact is I got to make art to be happy, and this counts. This is my art. It's weird. It's strange. It's not as cool as other people's art, maybe. But maybe you think it's cool enough. At any rate, it's official now. It's on. I've started it. And hopefully, in the not-too-distant future, this show will... Well, that's interesting. Your tax information document has been approved. All right, but it doesn't show me anything. Terms and conditions, cool. I can open that up and look at that. Dashboard. Payments are active. Your payment account has been verified. Current balance, $0. Projected monthly payment, $10 minimum. You should start receiving payments once your balance goes over the threshold. Most recent payments, not made yet. Overall, all podcasts. And then I can break it down per show and see how it's doing. Good. That answers a question I was really curious about. And it's why I'm still on the air. Because I want, like I was asking, I want to be able to produce other people's shows, monetize it, with other people's talent, and take my little cut for being the person that run. But does that count as sub-licensing or renting? I don't know. Oh, and one of the things we didn't ever really quite look at that I just think is funny and we should look at is, where is that? Is it in monetization? No. Is it in statistics? Let me open this page. There's a page where I can look at my, all the accounts. Like, you got this kind of account. Where is it? It's not here. Basic info, distribution, podcast page sending, auto sharing, RSS, ads, options. Options. I can active max ads, max ad duration, post rolls. I can do a post roll and record a thing which has some blurbs and things, and restricting ads categories. You can block ads based on, okay, but I can kind of pick and choose some stuff here. I've got new controls, which is cool. Managing intro. I could, should, would record a new intro that rolls on Spreaker, and that'll give me an opportunity to be weird. But I got to follow I'm really paranoid. Like, if I can't promote or advertise anything, any product at all, then I can't even do any endorsements. Like, what? I don't want to import things. Where's the bit about, I don't want to delete it either. Ads options, sort episodes, RSS customization, auto sharing, podcast page settings. No, I don't want to change that. Distribution. We've already read that, right? What was the other thing I wanted to look at? Geolocation. I've already looked at that. Demographics. I can't look at that. I've got upgrade plan. Where is this? Where I can see plans? I just want to see plans. Aha! Plans. Spreaker.com/plans. Professional. There's also an enterprise tier. That's expensive, yo. Like, custom pricing. Multiple podcasts hosting. 24/7 live stream option. Customizable RSS feed. Programmatic monetization. Ad campaign management. Full statistics. Unlimited team collaborators. Customizable player colors. I don't even know what that means, but it's so expensive they didn't put a price tag on it. Okay. If I wanted to go to enterprise, that's $100 a month. Now, some people would think that's a lot of money, and other people wouldn't even bat an eye at a subscription that costs that much, right? Like, $100 a month, that's easy. If you can throw away that kind of money, hit me up. Support my podcast. Let me be a whole station. Because there you get multiple podcast hosting, 24/7 live streaming option, customizable RSS feeds, programming. It's all the same things, plus other features. Episode scheduling, recording live streaming app, multiple podcast hosting, unlimited listeners, unlimited audio storage, right? For $100 a month. That's $1,200 for the whole year. That's a goal. I want to be able to. Is it realistic to think that by podcasting and posting my original written content on WhatsApp and taking consultation meetings for people interested in my wacky, absurdist spiritual consultation service, that the combination of those three things will make me enough money that I'll be able to pay for the full station, including, producing other people's shows? Maybe. Maybe not. Under the professional level, which is, the tier below enterprise, there's Anchorman, which is $45 a month if you bill it annually, or $50 a month if you bill it monthly. So literally half the price. And that's got multiple podcast hosting for 1,500 hours worth of storage, unlimited listeners, multiple podcast hosting, episode scheduling, recording, live stream. Everything's that's basic, right? The hours change, but all the other bits there are the same. You can do up to 5 hours per podcast. I don't know who's doing 5-hour long podcasts. That would be like a 3-show lineup, right? Where you got to change shows out in order to be live on all the time and literally trying to compete for eyes or ears, listeners, against mainstream media. That sounds like I need staff. Listeners chat box, external apps integration, full distribution RSS feed for each podcast, customizable feed, customizable player, full statistics, all the downloads, the daily listeners, the listening sources, the listening geolocation, episode likes, followers, trends, audience demographics, devices, and episode evolution. In other words, how the episodes individually, the analytics changed over time. Monetization, ad revenue sharing, dynamic ad insertion, limited access podcasts, which means you can create, private podcasts that you can then charge a flat fee for people to get the special private link for, which is something I'm going to spin off into. I'm going to keep some shows free and available through the monetization program with ads inserted. And I'm going to make some shows that are going to be ad-free, I hope, if I understand correctly, that are limited access podcasts that you got to cough up $10 or something, $9.99, $7.77 to listen to the multi-episode product. But those will be like high production things once I got it all going. Then this is really truly the end of today's episode. As I finish up this is the one bit I didn't get to talk about earlier that I was worried about not missing. Their most popular plan is the broadcaster level. That's $18 a month if billed annually, or $20 a month if billed monthly. You get 500 hours of audio storage. You get unlimited listeners, multiple podcasts, episode scheduling. You can do it live, or you can upload a thing and schedule it. 3 hours per podcast. Listeners, chat box, external apps integration, the full RSS feed package, the downloads, the daily listeners, the listening sources, the listeners' geolocation, the episode likes, and the followers trend. I had been, for most of this time, leading up until now, working with the on-air talent. I currently, for 2020, last year, busted my ass at my day job and saved enough money to pay for the year in advance on the broadcaster level. So I can now create multiple shows, have each show have its own, analytics, its own advertising campaign, and its own profit monetization sharing. And you guys can be the audience for all of those shows, or whatever. Certified Statistics by IAB Tech Lab. Hosting with Sprecher means having the most reliable data in the industry, giving you an accurate analysis of your audience and opening you up to more advertising potential. Distribute and monetize your podcast on all of the most popular platforms. Right? Boom, 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 boom. I should screenshot grab that because I can use that in my... I can legally use that in my advertising now, because my show has been, even before monetizing it, available on iTunes, whatever that one's called, the green one. What's that one called? Sprecher? No, this is Sprecher. iTunes. Oh gosh, I sound like a terrible, terrible DJ host, not knowing. Spotify, iTunes, Spotify, Google, this one, whatever the circle one is, Stitcher, Castbox, iHeartRadio, Sonos, Deezer, Radioline, TuneIn, this other one with no name, and this last one, Podchaser. I forgot I already said Deezer. No, that one's Deezer. Anyways, I've already read the places that it's available at. And here's the frequently asked questions. Are there hidden fees? No way. The prices you see are fixed and include all the features listed. Also, we offer additional features that you can buy and or pay for separately from the store page. Let's take a look at that as we close out this episode. I already host a podcast. Can I move it to Sprecher? Yes, you can. I don't care. Don't need to. Already started. I started original with Sprecher. Can I start over? Can I start with a lower plan and upgrade to a higher one later? Sure thing. I totally did that. You can select the plan. I've been free. I couldn't do that for very long because I just kept running out of time. I kept rambling and barely getting through an intro and being like, oh, 15 minutes are up. Gotta go. Bye. So I'm like, I'm going to pay for the $6. My first year was the $6 plan and the 15-minute plan for a hot second. And then my second year, I think I stayed on the $6 plan, although it was a little bit cheaper before. It was like $4.99 when I started. And then this year, 2018, I would love next year to have made more than enough money to pay for the Anchorman plan next year at $45 a month. What's 45 times 12? I'm not going to even pretend to be able to do that math in my head. And anybody judging me for not wanting to do that math in my head can suck it. That's $540. Plus all the other things I got to pay, right? Let's get there. Cool. So, what was the other thing I was going to read? I was going to read one other thing. Podcasting tools for success. Cool. I'm going to go through, I got that queued up. So, things on their store, right? Podcasting tools for success. Improve every aspect of your podcast with Sprecher's special products and outside services provided by our favorite companies. I've already upgraded my plan to the middle ground platform. And audience, I'm not directly asking you or manipulating you, and in no way, shape, or form am I offering you money. But I hope that together, by creating and listening and being excited about this show, we create growth in the download numbers so that sometime later this next year, or sometime later this year, or at the beginning of next year at the latest, I can pay for and build that mobile app dedicated to the podcast, especially if they can let me aggregate and bundle all the shows together and not charge me for every show. If they do, then fuck it. Because that's $99 a year. It says so right here, and we can click the open learn more, but I'm not interested at this time. But I will be, promoting the podcast on the network, starting at $10. You can start a $10, I can start a $10 advertising campaign for my show and for other people's shows. And here's all the info about ad campaigns, general highlights, promote your brand, reach millions of users, use your own banners, get stats on how your ads and your campaigns are doing, manage campaigns straight from your account, create one now to give a boost to your plays and stats. So if you purchase a campaign plan starting at $10, impressions cost $2 every 1,000 impressions. Upload and edit your ads and info and submit it to Sprecher. If it gets approved, your ads will be placed on Sprecher's pages, including users' news feeds and the Explore page. I'm really, really tempted to push that button and start advertising the show so that it starts generating more revenue, but I'm not going to do that yet. I'll do that a little bit later. There's the finest royalty-free music available by Jamendo Licensing, which it's a subscription package, I think. There's another one powered by Epidemic Sound, and that's $100 a year. So I can get access to royalty-free music and raise the quality of my audio production. But why should I do that when I can produce my own music? Establish your audio brand. Get high-quality audio intros and jingles starting at $20. I'm not really sure what that is. I think that's like literally paying them to hire voiceover specialists and create jingles for you. Sprecher has teamed up with audio branding specialists from Music Radio Creative, an international audio production company, and provides access to voiceovers, audio producers, singers, and musicians who bring their knowledge and talent to your show. How does it work? Prices start from as little as $20. You get access to only professional voiceover artists in a variety of languages. A team of fully trained audio specialists are available there and then if you need help with script writing or voiceover choices. All audio elements are royalty free, which means you don't have to worry about further licensing fees. So I guess anyways, I don't know that I'm going to ever do that, but I can produce my own music. The podcast host, podcast partner, nurturing your success. Podcast courses, live coaching, and production service by the podcast host. Empower your podcasting with these professional services from Colin Gray and the team at the podcast host. I'm going to open that tab, learn some more, but I'm probably not going to pay for any of those services because I think I'm already doing pretty good. $315 to get our podcasting learning community, live coaching, online courses, resources, and training. Podcast launch package. Go live with our help. Sorry, my show's been live for 3 years. Podcast launch package. The podcast host launch package is designed to take the weight off your shoulders when it comes to podcasting. We take care of all the other technical elements. We offer a range of support mentoring through the launch of your podcast. We'll work with you to design your new show along with figuring out the strategy around it. Then we will help you with equipment and producing and publishing your show on a regular basis. This package includes production of the first 4 episodes. Why would I buy a product like this if I'm already paying for Sprecher to produce my own podcast? I don't know, but okay. The Jamendo music licensing service is $29 for every 3 months for a lot of music, and the Epidemic Sound one is $99 for a year to have access to all the sound effects libraries and download your choice of music and sound effects. Add them to Sprecher Studio and use them throughout your recordings. That I might pay for, especially if there's really good sound effects. Because then I can do like way less sound effect making and way more like Foleying my show with other people's sound effects. But that's a whole I'll pay for it later kind of thing. Turn your episode into a blog post with audio transcriptions starting at 10 cents a minute. That I'm moderately interested in, but only if it's really super wicked accurate. 10 cents a minute with no hidden costs. Pay as you go, no monthly commitments or contracts. Check the work in progress transcripts anytime. Redos available. Wow. That's if I want to make transcriptions of all my podcast episodes. I'd have to be making a lot of money to be able to feel comfortable even paying that. I don't want that now, right? Okay. Interesting products, though. Cool. Glad we visited. Thanks for following and tuning in to all of that. So having reviewed that, you can see where I'm at. I'd love to have more more data. Oh, I just realized that I do have access to this page with the level of the thing that I have got now. And okay, the full list of places where my podcast can be heard is the following: Deezer, generic Android app, a Vega media server, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Windows Media Player, Podcaster, Podcast, Firefox, Podcast Addict, Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, iTunes, stock Android browser, Castbox, Lav, spelled L-A-V-F, terrible spelling choice, can't pronounce it, Sprecher, Spotify, Overcast, and Apple Podcasts. And I've got a page that shows me like the bar graph breakdown of all my things. I wonder if I can take this all the way to, I can only go so far back as August 20th, 2019. Interesting. So from August 20th, 2019 to now, February 20th, 2020, Apple Podcast represents 45% of my downloads with 1,165 downloads over there. Overcast represents 12% with 319 downloads. Spotify is 10% with 276 downloads. Spreaker.com represents 8% with only 224 downloads from the actual Spreaker.com website. How bizarre. And I've got a bunch of, I guess I could make them show up. I've got Safari, Internet Explorer, Other, Windows Media Player, and Chrome with individual. Other gets 14 downloads. Average, a Vega Media Server has got 3 downloads. Internet Explorer has got 4. Safari, 4. Chrome, 4. Windows Media Player, 5. Podcast Addict, 5. Podbeam, 8. Alexa Media Player, 9. That's pretty cool. So, having just decided to monetize, imagine if I'd monetized all of those downloads from all of those different sources, right? That would have been cool. Well, we're doing it now, folks. So, between now and this time next year, I want to more than double my total number of downloads. Right? I want to exponentially quadruplify my downloads. And that means I got to be on it. I got to be on the air all the time so that my dear lovely audience out in Crestview, Florida, and Trujillo Alto, Puerto Rico, and San Jose, California, and Berkeley, California, and Orlando Park, Illinois, have got stuff to listen to. Shout out to all you folks out there listening to the show. And thanks for putting up with such a weird, bizarre, prolonged, and super rambly long set of episodes. I'm now going to take a couple days off. Aw, woe is me. I might only take a day off. But I'm going to take some time off to rest my voice and to rally and to do some editing. Right? Because, like I said, it was an exploration of how far out of whack I might have been with the EULA I was already utilizing. Obviously, no problems have come up yet, but I do need to do a serious, hard listen and review pass, trim some minor shit out so that it's above reproach, and then we're in business. As always, friends, I share with you my thoughts, not because I want you to blind faith believe in what I'm saying, but because I want you to entertain those thoughts, question them, angle them, view them, reason with them, wrestle with them, and think for yourself. And support me in expressing myself artistically, right? So, Om Shanti, Medishanti Om, Namaste. Thank you for listening. As always, I have been your eccentric host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo.